Welcome to Black Art Today's video series, UnCovered. UnCovered is Black Art Today's intimate conversations with artists of African descent that represent African culture in the genres of literature, visual arts, and the performing arts. In today's episode, Black Art Today interviews author Angela Odom.
I'm Angela M. Odom. I am a bona fide decorated war hero turned life coach. I served in the Army for 26 years honorably, and was it September of 2015? I retired at the age of 48. Woohoo! And I was able to, I retired at September 2015, wrote my first book the next year. In 2016, and then in 2017 I was able and fortunate enough to become a certified life coach. So with all that said, the biggest and most I guess what gives me the most joy, of course, is I'm Ryan's mom. So with everything else I'm doing, I'm a parent. Well, Bronco Strong, well, really it is a story I was compelled to write. I was I could say fortunate enough to deploy to 3 separate combat operations while I served in the Army. And the first one was when I first got there, a newly minted second lieutenant at Fort Bragg. This was Desert Storm to Saudi Arabia. And the second one was in 2003. I don't know if you all remember when George Bush, the president, was on that aircraft, and he said, "Ooh, we won, victory." Well, that was not true. So 2003 is when I went to Qatar. So that was the second combat operations. And the third one, which is the period that covers this particular book in Bronco Strong, a memoir of the last deployed personnel services battalion. And that was October of 2006 through January 2008. That was the deployment period. The book covers support soldiers. This is not a book about big chest men kicking in doors and diving on grenades and, to save their buddies. This is a book about support soldiers. This is a everyday, the routines, what happens in a combat zone. And so for this particular story, we lost 2 soldiers, and we go into what that looks like, what that feels like. And my soldiers were amazing. That is the word that I use. This was a tumultuous assignment for everybody. Everybody lost something. Everyone sacrificed something. And so the reason I wrote the book 8 years after we redeployed was there had not been a 4 to 6 month period where I had not heard from one of those soldiers. I was their battalion commander, and over the years they continued to reach out to me as they had served in that one particular combat zone with me. Some of them had deployed 1, 2, 3, up to like 6 and 7 times. And so I think we all needed this story to be told to make sure that our soldiers who we lost, that their sacrifices, their contributions were documented because they matter. And so what inspired me really was my command sergeant major, which if you're familiar with the Army, you know that was my battle buddy, the battalion commander and the battalion command sergeant major together. Well, he passed away after he retired. He continued to serve. He was in Afghanistan and had a heart attack. And so in February of 2015, I was sitting there in Texas at his funeral, and I saw his 2 handsome sons stand, and they read a letter from their dad. The letter was typical. It was one of those stories of, when I get back, these are the things we're going to do. I'll be at your rugby game. We're going to hang out. I love you. And I realized in that moment that although they loved their son, their dad, and they were definitely proud of him, proud of his service. They did not and could not understand what he had done in his 26 years of service. See, what they didn't know was my son was 10, and he was running around the house at the same time, pew, 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 and he would say to me, "Mom, is this what you did?" And I was like, "No." I never shot anybody, and no one ever shot directly at me. And so I realized I had to tell that story. So there was the push that I needed to make sure that the 15th Personnel Services Battalion's soldiers were always remembered and always put in the best light possible, because what they did mattered in those 15 months. And so that's what Bronco Strong was about. It's about the soldiers in their everyday lives and all of their sacrifices. So you and everyone else can see the routine day to day, and you will know that they matter. What authors influenced my writing style? I'm drawing a blank. I'm drawing a big old blank because I didn't look at any particular authors when I decided to write the Bronco Strong book. I simply was compelled to write it. And I write like I talk. It's just straightforward. And so what author? So what I did was I just set out to write it. I contacted some of the soldiers that I served with, because again, it had been 8 years. And I asked them if they would like to participate in this project, because I thought it would be outrageous for this book to only have my perspective. So I included several of my former soldiers, privates, down at colonels or sergeant majors, to provide their particular viewpoint inside of the Bronco Strong book. In addition to when we were in Iraq in 2006 to 2008, my sergeant major and I, Tim Livingood, asked our soldiers, some of them, to write their "Why I Served" stories, and those stories were printed in the Army's Human Resources Professional Magazine, and I got permission to reprint those stories. So the book, the writing style is kind of a collaborative project. Well, the very first thing is writers write, so I would, my advice, and people ask about, how did I complete the first book? What was that project like? And my thing is to them is to set a date somewhere in the future, and that is a date you want to be published. You just don't want to be a writer, you want to be a published author. And so for me, I wrote a note, and it said, Angela M. Odom, published author. This was before I even had a solid outline. And then underneath there, I said, make it true, right? Make it true. After I had decided to write the book, make it true. And so my advice is to, prioritize your time, prioritize your day, your week, your month, and actually put yourself on your calendar, your schedule. All these things you have to do, life happens. Well, yeah, life happens. So make it true, and make sure that you prioritize your time and actually get the work done. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece, that first paragraph, right? So write it, and of course, good writing comes in the revision. So write it, revise it, get yourself an editor, get yourself a common Noxie, and just keep moving forward. So that's what I would tell the aspiring authors, is to start writing. Writers write, and so make time to do that, and just keep moving forward. When I'm not writing, what do I love or like to do? I think that's like the best question ever. Because I'm still trying to figure that out. What do I love and what do I like to do? I retired as a Army colonel, and I'm so used to taking care of everyone else. And so after I retired, I just set out on this whole venture to engage in extreme self-care. And what I recognized was, after moving every 1 to 3 years, my entire adult life, that most cities are the same. Most cities have, they're going to have some place, some tourist spot. They're going to have some great place to eat. They're going to have something that's adventurous, and then they're going to have some relaxing thing. So all those cities are the same. So what I've decided to do is really just to make sure I'm going any place in the world for the experience. In other words, I'm building memories. And so I'll go anywhere to connect with someone that I love and admire and who respects me. So last year I went to Ireland. That was cool. There was no writing there. Actually, we did dabble in all of the different alcohol they had. I don't drink a lot, and I really don't drink alcohol a lot, but I did in Ireland. Oh, who do I admire? I think I have 4 people really that I look up to and hold dear to my heart. My 2 personal standards are my 2 Hatties, Hattie. My paternal grandmother, her name was Hattie. She died when I was in Iraq serving as battalion commander, as depicted in the book Bronco Strong. She died in November 2007. She was over 100 years old. So she taught me how to pray, and she taught me, she demonstrated that I should always go where I am celebrated and not merely where I'm tolerated. That was a huge lesson to learn in my early 20s. And then my other Hattie, my mom, my Hattie Mae, she taught me about civic engagement, and she taught me by demonstration to have incredible work ethic. And so she would say to me, Angela, if you're supposed to sweep the floor, then that had better be the best swept floor ever. Go back and look at it again and make sure you're proud of your work. She taught me about integrity. And so my 2 Hattie Mays, my 2 Hatties, my personal standard. And then my 2 professional standards are 2 retired Army colonels. The first one is my mentor, Vasil Montgomery, whom I met the very first week at my very first duty station, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, home of the airborne. This was when I was a newly minted 2nd lieutenant. She and her husband, they were both captains. They had been in the Army about almost 10 years when I met, and I had been in the Army about 6 months. And they taught me how the Army runs overall and how I should conduct myself. I learned from Vasil, who's also my sorority sister. I learned from her how to remain, committed to myself and who I am, my personality, while finding my way, my footing in the Army. It's a male-dominated environment. She taught me that as cute as I am, I can still be cute. She taught me that. And she taught me that just because I like to sing loud and often, she taught me when to do it. And so one professional standard, the other professional standard I used my 26 years in the Army, and actually now, was my battalion commander, again at Fort Bragg. It all started there. Tom Owens, my battalion commander, taught me how to how to treat people in the Army, and then how to expect to be treated. And so many other things I learned from him by observing the both of them, actually all 4, my 2 personal standards and my 2 professional standards. It was Tom Owens who just so happened to have graduated from the same undergraduate college that I went to, and that was the University of Southern Mississippi. And he just taught me how to take care of soldiers. And by observing him, I came to understand that I was in service to my soldiers, right? Yeah, I was the face of the team or the organization, but it was all about the soldiers. All about the soldiers and the mission. That's what I learned from Tom Owens, to always be in service of my soldiers and to make sure they had what they needed, make sure that if there was anyone attempting to disrupt their time or take away their resources, that I was the one to stand in the gap. That's what I learned from him. And I learned also to be a quiet professional. I don't have to beat my chest and tell you I'm in charge. I'm in charge because I'm in charge. Greatest challenge I faced, you know what? I think the greatest challenge I faced was leaving the love of my life for my first love. My son is the love of my life, and the Army is my first love. So I became a parent at 38 after having been in the Army for 16 years. And I love serving with soldiers. And when I was told or informed that I would be a battalion commander, I was all excited about it. I was, okay, this is great. I've been working for this. I want this. And I was told that my unit, the 15th Personnel Services Battalion, again, goes back to the Bronco Strong book. I was told that my unit was already in the process of deploying to Iraq, and that I would have to pack up. We were in Virginia at the time, and meet them there at Fort Hood, and head on over to Iraq. It was, I think, one of the most difficult decisions I had to make. And thank goodness my grandma taught me how to pray, because that's what I did. I went in prayer first, and realizing that God knows everything and all, and has already decided what this might manifest into. And so I knew that the reason I was being asked to lead these soldiers in this tumultuous time was because God knew I had something to give, some value to provide. I knew I could lead soldiers. I knew I could build teams. That was not even an issue. But could I, Lord have mercy, lead my son at 14 months, just 2 months after we had celebrated his first birthday? And so the goodness of it is that I have an incredible support system. So my niece, who was a brand new newlywed, and her kind husband said that they would keep my son safe, hold him dear, and ensure that he was progressing as I left him. And so that was, I think, one of the most significant challenges in my whole life. Isn't that something? The last book I read, was that like some kind of joke? Bronco Strong. No, actually the last book I read was Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. And he is the host of The Daily Show, which is a comical satire late night show. He was born at the tail end of the apartheid in South Africa, and he's put together just several stories of his life and his interaction with his mom, and how she literally had to hide him for most of his life. He didn't even know it initially. So that was it's a tremendous look on how people will go to the ends of the earth to divide and diminish others. And it's also a great book on how he progressed through that. And really, he simply highlights those stories, and it highlights the character of his mother and his family and the people that loved him and poured into him. And so we were reading 6 books, 1 book every month and a half. And the books are Leaders Eat Last, Talk Like Ted, The One Thing, which I love, The One Thing, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and then the 5 dysfunction, I think the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Then of course Bronco Strong would be the last book in that 6-book series, and so that's Odom Reading Club. The most significant decision Angie Odom ever made was defying my Hattie Mae at 17. You see, in my household, what my mama said was what we did. That was just the way it was. You know, there was no questioning or talking back or challenging or negotiating. It was, this is what I expect you to do, and you do it. She raised 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls, and for me, I decided that I wanted to take some pressure off of her, financial pressure. She and my father were divorced when I was 3. My dad was always in my life, but at the same time, she was footing most of the bills, right? So I decided I wanted to go into the Army Reserves, and I talked to her about it, and she said no, and I needed her signature at that time because of the age requirement. And so what I did was a day or so, a week or so after my birthday, I signed the papers myself. Bam! I don't know if you've ever heard of or seen a beat down. Well, that's what happened that day, and I thank God for my oldest brother for getting her off of me, because she was going to kill me. But that was the most, I think, one of the most significant and consequential decisions I ever made was to defy my mom at that point. And then, so I was a private, Army private in Army Reserves, and I did this so that I could, you know, not be a burden, pretty much. And so I actually went to college, University of Southern Mississippi, and realized that I didn't have enough money to pay for college, right, to complete it. And I wanted to complete that goal. I was not going back to Hattie Mae's house. Woohoo! And so I was able to, you know, get a ROTC scholarship, be commissioned a second lieutenant. You know, when I graduated from the University of Southern Mississippi. And so the second most consequential decision was staying in the Army. So when I was commissioned a second lieutenant, went on active duty, and all I wanted to be was a captain in the United States Army. It's like, I want to be a captain. I want to be able to command soldiers. And so the decision was to remain in the Army on active duty after the rank of captain. And so that was the second most consequential decision, was to remain in the Army. And I remained because I loved it. I was having fun. Oh, wow. The mission of Black Art Today is important to me because it's a platform that gives aspiring, emerging, and really seasoned artists a platform, a place where they can be in a community with like-minded artists who appreciate their work, who understand you know, the effort and resources and time it took to manifest that which they love. And so it's a great platform, great community to have your work nurtured and to have your work appreciated. I love what the brand stands for, and I think the brand stands for integrity and community. I look forward to engaging with you on Barco Strong book and other topics, especially if you just want to talk. You know I'm a great conversationalist.